Recording in progress. Hi there.
Hello, this is Dream Idiots. My name is Morris. That's Brian. Each week we tell each other stories and we talk about the stories. Sometimes the stories are from history, sometimes they're from current events, sometimes they're from our own addled imaginations. Brian, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are things up there?
They're good. They're good. We had a heavy snowfall and then it promptly melted off within 24 hours. So
Yeah,
that's the way
I'm
things are today.
in Texas. I'm in shorts and a t-shirt.
Woohoo.
The
Brian,
summer is here.
where can the good folks find our stuff?
So, as always, please check out dreamidiots.com. You can fill in the contact us page if you'd like. Drop us a line, send us a story idea or a curse word of the week. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and if you just want to drop us a line, dreamidiotspodcast at Gmail, just to say hello. And we haven't gotten any reviews in a while. So if you haven't, please go on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen and give us 5 stars and shoot us a review. That would be appreciated and hugely helpful.
Yes, indeed. That would be awesome. We take turns, as I said, telling each other stories. It's my turn this week, I think, I hope, because I got a story ready to go if you're ready to hear it.
I'm ready.
Okay, Brian, have you ever wondered what Mexico was up to during World War II? The country Mexico?
That's an interesting question. I probably, because I'm a dork this way, I probably have had that thought because in my mind, they were only minimally involved and didn't really play a part. But you're gonna tell me I'm wrong.
Well, no, not necessarily, and I don't mean what they were up to in a nefarious way, but I've always been curious about that, and I came across this story while I was looking something else up, and of course I got sidetracked because I have no short-term memory anymore, and my attention span is just for
What?
shit.
Who?
But let's talk about some other countries first, and their alignments during the war. The greatest example of neutrality is probably fill in the blank
Switzerland.
Switzerland, that's right. Going as far as to fire upon both Allied and Axis aircraft which crossed into its territory, which
Nice.
I didn't know that about Switzerland. Yeah, they didn't seem to mind stashing Nazi funds stolen from Holocaust victims, though. Spain, how are they aligned in World War II?
I have no idea.
They were actually neutral, although they did early on supply certain materiel to German forces. But they did lean fascist given the fact they'd been through their own civil war. And of
Hmm.
course, Francisco Franco was still alive and he was a fascist. Spain was neutral. And to spoil a movie that's umpteen years old, that's where one of the escapees from the Great Escape makes it to España, España. As James Coburn says in a really bad Australian accent, he does make it to Spain. Um, the Balkan states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, all declared joint neutrality on the same day.
Okay.
And that's great. But for what it's worth, all three were occupied by both the
Like
Soviets and the Nazis during the war. Finland, how are they
Finland,
oriented?
I think essentially more allied because I think that mostly because of the story I told about Private Koivunen, the soldier who inhaled all the methamphetamine.
Oh, yeah, yeah, right.
He was fighting the Russians.
Right. Which means if he was fighting the Russians, that means they were allied with the Axis powers. Finland was actually one of the Axis powers because they share that huge ass
Oh, right.
border with Russia.
With Russia, right?
But I think that has less to do with liking fascism and more to do with the
Just
fact that they
hating
hated the
Russia.
Soviet Union. Yeah, exactly. It's the working case of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So let's return to Mexico. What were they up to? Well, in May of 1942, the country did declare war on the Axis powers. Whew, whew, that's a good one for us. One might speculate that this action had to do with its largest neighbor being at war with said Axis powers, but it's not like the US and Mexico had a century or so of amicable proximity to
Mhm.
their credit. And they were probably concerned with the country they had greatest affiliation with still in Europe, what had happened to Spain and what they went through. And so they were probably anti fascist. I'm just making a total stab in the dark here. But in fact, Mexico had lost 4 ships to German submarines by May of 1942.
Oh
because
well.
they were supplying oil. And
Hmm.
so the U-boats would destroy these oil ships. The main wartime contributions from Mexico were usually the result of a collaboration with the United States, back when we had allies.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Late in the summer of 42, the United States and Mexico came to an agreement that 250,000 Mexican citizens who were residing in the U.S. at the time could be allowed to serve in the American Armed Forces.
How many?
250,000.
Wow.
Mexico provided 250,000 soldiers for us during World War II. That to me is the sign of an ally.
Yeah.
Not only will we help you out,
Yeah.
but we're going to let
Absolutely. Right.
our citizens come and serve in your army. The second main contribution from Mexico, and this I'm a little bit unclear on, but it in the war effort came about as a result of a meeting between FDR and Mexican President Manuel Avila Camacho. The two heads of state worked out an operation that would place a series of training posts in the Los Coronado Islands off of the coast of California near the cities of San Diego and, of course, the most magical place on earth, as per Krusty the Clown, Tijuana, Mexico.
Hmm.
These small islands were used by local fishermen basically as a place to dry out their nets. That's how small a lot of these islands were. And as I understand it, some of these were used as observation posts as well. Because an attack by the Imperial Japanese forces on the United States Pacific coastline was a constant fear for Americans. How many, by 1942, how many attacks do you think had actually occurred on the Pacific coast of America by the Japanese forces?
By 42.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
not counting Pearl Harbor, not counting Pearl Harbor.
right. So I
Any,
mean,
some, all, none?
I want to say zero.
Zero is what I would say, but there were actually four
Oh,
that
okay.
occurred. The earliest came in February of 42 when the Elwood oil field near Santa Barbara, California was shelled by a Japanese submarine. This submarine had navigated up a channel from the Pacific Ocean. 16 shells hit an oil derrick and a pump house. So it wasn't really Pearl Harbor 2, but it was enough to get the attention of U.S. citizens. There were no casualties. Then in June of 42, Fort Stevens, which I'd never heard of. It's on the Oregon coast, and it took fire from a submarine which had emerged out of the Columbia River.
Oh, wow.
Just popped up, said hello, and lobbed 17 shells their direction. This was a Civil War era fort. That's how long this fort had been around. The armament wasn't up to date. I get the sense it had kind of a skeleton crew for it. But 17 shells did hit the fort grounds. The worst damage, they hit some telephone cables, and they took out the baseball field.
Hmm.
So, dick, right?
Right.
Right in the middle of the
Resounding
season too.
success. Right.
The boys from Barrack 17 were about to take the pennant,
Hey,
and
who's
or
on
they,
first?
yeah, a lot of them landed in a swamp as well. There were no casualties. Oregon was hit two more times in September and October of 1942 when the same submarine emerged and launched a float plane near Brookings, Oregon, some 300 miles from the original attack. The float plane dropped incendiary bombs with the intent of starting forest fires.
Mm.
Well, a pretty interesting tactic. Both attempts were unsuccessful. There were no casualties. Then in 1944, the Japanese military launched the balloons. Have you heard about the balloons, Brian?
Minimally, because I've read something about balloon attacks, like in the Bay Area, maybe.
No, these were in Oregon. Well,
Okay.
what happened is some 9,000 balloons were launched, designed by the Japanese military. These balloons were launched, 9,000 of them, and they would ascend to about 30,000 feet and then float 5,000 miles across the Pacific using the jet stream.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty, I don't want to say cool, but it's very
Clever.
innovative.
Right.
After 3 days, the balloons would start to descend over the mainland United States and drop their cargo. Each balloon carried 50 pounds of explosives.
Wow.
In 1944 and 45, it is estimated that 350 of the 9,000 balloons survived the trip across the ocean. I'm guessing some got up in weather patterns. They had malfunctions. Who knows why they? But
Right.
that's not. That's less than 10% survived the trip across the ocean. Several were intercepted by U.S. military and shot down. A few made it through, though. Some as far inland as Michigan and Iowa.
Wow.
Yeah, that I never knew that. Um, in what would be the only casualties on the U.S. mainland during World War II, a group of 5 children and one adult woman were killed when they stumbled upon a downed balloon and its explosives. This would be in the middle of Oregon somewhere in the wilderness.
Wow.
The woman was also pregnant, so you can put the death count at 7. So 7 civilians did die. 6 of them, well, 5 of them children, one a fetus, and one the mother. So there was a precedent for this type of attack by the Japanese forces, and we see this in what was that movie, 1942, by Steven Spielberg, that
Uh-huh.
tells the story of this kind of attack. There was fear that this would happen in Los Angeles, San Francisco, like you mentioned, and of course San Diego, which would be a huge target because of the naval bases. Um, so it seems that a joint operation between Mexico and the U.S. might better protect Southern California. The Mexican posts had the soldiers, these little posts, these little observation areas, and the U.S. ships patrolled the Pacific waters. So good deal.
Right.
One such ship in the area was a submarine hunter, which is a great name for a ship. It's called the USS 815. I'll call it the 815 from here on out. It was under the command of senior grade lieutenant. So he's whatever the big lieutenant is. I don't know if that's a second lieutenant or first lieutenant.
I
I can
forget.
never remember.
First, I think.
But a senior grade lieutenant Lafayette Hubbard, with a name like that, of course he's going to be in the Navy, or maybe he's going to be a jazz man like Horatio Hornblower. He had a commissioned rank before America's entry into the war, and after Pearl Harbor, he was initially set to command a ship outside of Boston Harbor, a converted trawler. But that command was taken away from him before he could take the ship. He was transferred to the waters of the Pacific Northwest, where his XO, he met his executive officer on 815, was a lieutenant like himself, but he was a junior grade lieutenant by the name of Thomas Moulton. The two men got along very, very well. The lieutenant at that point claims to have detected a sub under the water as they headed down the coastline from Oregon, Astoria, Oregon, to San Diego. So he and his crew spent nearly 3 days dropping depth charge after depth charge to the point where another ship had to come and restock their ammunition. He sent a message to the commander in chief of the Pacific Fleet, who sent reinforcements. 2 blimps as naval spotters and 4 other ships were dispatched to the site, where no crew member from any of them spotted any sign of a destroyed sub, no wreckage, no oil spills. The lieutenant became convinced that the submarine must have gone down at an incredible depth, and that perhaps there were 2 subs down there, which accounted for the large reading he was getting. Finally, command called off the operation, and in the ensuing investigation determined that 815 had spent 3 days dropping depth charges on a gigantic magnetic ore deposit
Oh.
under the ocean.
Okay.
So I can see
Oops.
that kind of mistake being made. You're right. There are no
Right.
submarines down there. But the lieutenant was not relieved of his command, and he was ordered, okay, can you continue on to San Diego? Now, remember the Los Coronados Islands, Bryan, where we
Mhm.
started off with? Life continued there as usual. Not a bad posting, really. You're you're on the Baja de California or these Coronado Islands. That's where you're posted. That's not too bad, man. You look out at the Pacific Ocean every day. I mean, you're looking for subs, but not too bad. Things were great there until they actually came under fire, and this happened in late June of 1943. Artillery shells hit the island for a 2-day siege, and I believe it started the 28th of June of 1943. The Japanese were attacking at last. The 815 was now in the area, thank goodness, as backup, but couldn't make it there to assist because it was engaged in drills. These drills included artillery exercises
Okay.
and small arms fire, so rifle and pistol fire. The lieutenant had felt that the crew needed some practice, so he ordered the gunnery crew to fire upon some small uninhabited United States islands. There were 2 problems with this, Bryan. Problem 1, the islands were not part of the United States. And problem 2, they were not uninhabited. They were the Los Coronados Islands, Mexican territory. 815 was firing live artillery at an ally, Mexico.
Right.
This went on for 2 days until everyone figured out what was going on, and the U.S. Navy got a message that some crazy American was firing on them from the sea. Lieutenant Hubbard was removed from command of his ship for a second time since Boston. So not so great.
No.
This next element, however, is pretty amazing. A third remarkable aspect of Mexico's World War II effort, and I might come down back and do a full story on this because this is pretty amazing. A small band of pilots who trained with their American counterparts at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, these men formed a fighting squadron, the 201st. You ever heard of the 201st Squadron? I
No.
hadn't. They would see combat in this theater. They flew P-47 Thunderbolts, which is a really cool name for a fighter jet ship. Alongside US and Australian pilots, these men would help liberate the Philippines from Japan, which had fully occupied the island since May of 1942. The Battle of Luzon in January of 1945 was their finest hour. A number of Mexican pilots gave their lives in service to the liberation of the Philippines. The 201st is active to this day. There's been movies made about this group. I think they're primarily in Spanish
Right.
because, not a lot of people are going to touch that here. But they are active to this day, usually based out of Quintana Roo, which I thought was just the name of Joan Didion's daughter, but it's a place that they named her after. Um, and the pilots are known by their nom de guerre. Check this out. Aguilas Aztecas,
What does it mean?
the Aztec Eagles.
Pretty cool.
That's pretty goddamn badass.
Yeah.
The Aztec Eagles. And I believe Brazil sent some folks over. Argentina might have gotten involved as well, but it was the largest contingent of Spanish speaking combatants in World War II was the 201st Squadron, which is that's pretty incredible.
Right.
And we're going to close by catching up with Mexico's greatest wartime frenemy, Lieutenant Hubbard. As suggested by the Naval Review Board, he was never put in command of a ship again, thank God. Prior to the magnetic ore incident and the second incident at Coronados, he already had a bit of a reputation as a pain in the ass. He fabricated all types of stories about his personal history and his talents. In short, he was full of shit. Here's some direct quotes from review boards and superior officers in the Navy regarding the lieutenant. Quote, this officer is not satisfactory for independent duty assignment. Quote, he is garrulous and tries to give impressions of his importance. He also seems to think he has had unusual abilities in most lines. These characteristics indicate that he will require close supervision for satisfactory performance of any intelligence duty. End quote. Quote, he is not temperamentally fit for independent command. End quote. The last one, quote, he is not considered qualified for command or promotion at this time. Recommend duty on a large vessel where he can be properly supervised. He received a few assignments here and there. He was a navigator in a ship once for a couple of missions, but by and large, he seems to have spent the rest of the war at his desk job or in sick bay with back pains, malaria, or a recurrent ulcer. I can't imagine what would have caused that ulcer. And it also seems to be that some sources I looked at said that he was sued the Navy for a while, for a couple of years, tried to sue the Navy
Uh,
for some reason or another. But I'm not quite sure on that, so I'm not going to quote that. But by the time that was over, one of the things he didn't get to do when he was commanding ships and doing his thing in the Navy is that he didn't get to practice his pre-war occupation. He was a writer, and he got to return
okay.
to this. He had often written short stories published in magazines in the burgeoning genre of science fiction. And by 1950, Lafayette Ronald Hubbard published his most influential work,
Oh my God.
Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health. L. Ron Hubbard was here to stay, and his new religion would soon rise.
Missed that completely.
So, again, I end with a surprise reveal of a cult connection. It's almost like these crazy assholes really affect American history.
Yeah, just an endless series of Dunning-Kruger effect folks who just who really have deep and abiding faith in their own inability.
He he told a story of how he had actually fought in the Pacific to Moulton, his XO, and that
It
he
was
and
a
another
lie.
officer escaped and they had to travel across shark infested waters. I mean, just um, when the book that I used as my main source, which is a 1987 book published in the UK by Michael Russell, Barefaced Messiah: The True Story of L. Ron Hubbard. Of course, the Church of Scientology refutes all of what he says, and it, his wartime efforts are well known. He
Right.
was known as the Commodore inside of Scientology. He often wore his hat. He did serve in the Navy, but to what extent, I think it's pretty evident that he was not at all suited for command. That is my opinion.
Hmm.
History.com's five attacks on the U.S. During World War on U.S. soil during World War II. Evan Andrews. That was an article originally written in October of 2012, updated in May of 2025. So
Wow. Okay.
just last year. Another crazy little chapter. Just this country's ability to produce men like Jim Jones and L. Ron Hubbard and Marshall Applewhite and
Donald
David
Trump.
Koresh and Donald Trump, just it never ceases to amaze me. And as I was running through this story in my head, what I do is if I go run errands, I start reciting what I want to talk about. This car passes me, just blows past me in the left lane, BMW, with a Trump swamp the vote sticker on their car, which is what they're calling the latest attempt to um, win elections in
No.
Texas and other states, swamp the vote. And at this point, at this point, how do you not have enough evidence? Do you not have enough evidence that this man is a con man, a creep?
They don't care.
It's almost like this country was built on cults, Brian.
Yeah, very much so.
I don't get it. But
Yeah.
you know, we've had good allies, of which during World War II, Mexico was one, and an unheralded ally at that. I had never heard of these stories till I just caught this thing about L. Ron Hubbard, and then I was off, and then I was like, well, who shoot at the Mexico? What the hell? So, Viva Mexico! Thank you, Mexico, for your World War II service and for putting up with your crazy upstairs neighbor.
Yeah. Couple random thoughts. So I've actually stood in a couple military installations on islands before from World War II, both in one in Maine
Oh
near,
yeah.
and then one way up in I'm sorry, yes, one in the islands off the coast of Maine, and then one sort of SeaTech area. So
Mm-hmm.
out in Puget Sound, I've been stood in the like what a weird job that would be. Just stand here and keep your eye out and to see if something comes floating in,
Mm-hmm.
trying to kill us. So it's definitely peculiar.
Well, you
All
got to
those
be a
weird
special,
stories.
you got to be a special kind of person to be able to do that and do it well. I mean, it's an important job,
Just
and
regimented and diligent, and yeah, yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
not
Who
going
knows?
off on your own and doing crazy shit like firing at an ally. So that's cool. I didn't realize I knew that you'd been to Seattle, and of course you've got family connections down east. But yeah, I didn't think about that. There must have been lighthouses and outposts all up and down left over from
Well,
the Revolutionary War that were used
yeah, like
and
crazy. Yeah, yeah.
for defense.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well,
And the other sort of funny story from from the our recent Iran war is I'm not sure when they did this, but at some point in the I judge recent past, the government, the military in Iran, somebody went to the trouble of painting the silhouettes of I think they're F4
oh,
planes
yeah,
that they
yeah,
that they
yeah. I
that
heard
they
about this.
painted on the tarmac. F4s that of course they bought from us. Um, and painted some silhouettes on the tarmac, which have now been bombed several times because our military is so incredibly inept that saw a shadow wasted a whatever $6 million $8 million bomb Every single time it drops it on nothing, and the planes are off. The planes are hidden off somewhere else. Okay, this is. I mean, our government and our military is being run by a frat, as far as I can tell.
And not a good one.
Dude, right, dude, this is gonna be wicked awesome, man. Go
And not a good one like
blow some
Delta
shit up.
House. Yeah, it's astonishing. And then and she gets up
Yep.
and what's her name gets up and says we might President Trump has not ruled out reinstating the draft. Yeah, that's not gonna.
Yep. Send Barron.
Yeah, send him first.
Right. Right. Good
Send him
times.
first. And my family and I are going to start practicing the lyrics to "O Canada" because I'm going to be like what's his name in the story from a few weeks ago, uh, Corla Pandit, and
Hmm.
head off to Canada. So my kid, it's insane. And
Well,
it's getting
yeah.
lost in all this commemorative coins and hats for the 250th semi sesquicentennial
Mhm.
bullshit. It's nauseating.
Well, the other sort of weird news story, which I haven't had time to research yet to see if this is just weird, some weird conspiracy, but I saw in passing two video clips just on social media where people are claiming that the American death toll for soldiers already is way, way higher than is being reported, but the stories are being hidden, buried, sequestered, whatever.
It, I
That
mean,
that we have that hundreds of soldiers have already died, but they're trying to hide it. It wouldn't surprise me.
these guys are the same guys that grew up, our age, who grew up with the stories of Vietnam being the first televised war, and they're going to
Right,
do what they can to hide the coffins and the flags. I mean,
right.
it's so fucking gross.
Yeah,
And
it's like May Lie all over again. So there's a new documentary about Seymour Hersh that's out now
mhm,
on Netflix. A large portion of which is about this, him revealing all the cover up related to the atrocities in My Lai, where women, children were just gunned down
mhm.
and then covered up. And if you ever, if you think to this day that Colin Powell, former member of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, is a good person, he's not, because he was very much involved in the cover up of the army gunning down hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. They were just people.
Yeah.
And so this is the same old story. This is going to keep happening, and these fuckers don't care. So happily for your children, they're college, they're enrolled in school and college. So it's always poor kids who are high school dropouts that go first. So
Well, it's not going to matter. I mean, eventually they're going to come for everybody's kids
right,
because clearly they don't care about kids.
right,
They don't. Yeah, and my father up on the wall behind me is a picture of Dad's crew at the 67 evac. Above that are his right here are his discharge papers,
mm,
and over there is a sign that hung in the OR where he tried to patch together the hill people, the mountain people, and service personnel who were shot to shit in Vietnam in
good,
Your
right,
Pleiku. I, I would like to think that my late father would be disgusted by what is going on here. I mean, it's
right.
just anyway.
Anywho,
Boy, that's a hell of a way to end an episode.
good times.
Because we do have one last thing, and that is a
We're
curse word of the week.
We are a laugh riot. Yes, so as I often do, and I've begun to feel just a tiny bit bad about going back to this well over and over and over again, but Germany just keeps bringing it in terms of great curse words. And I actually found there does appear to be a guy, I need to do some more research, who I think goes by Super Angry German, who just posts various German words online. And I think he's genuinely German. He's a very thick accent.
How
But
can you
the
tell?
Yeah. But
How can
the
you tell he's
cur
angry? I mean, it's an angry
it-
sounding language.
so curse word for this week for Dream
Mhm.
Idiots. Kampfzwerg. 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 So a
Kampsvag.
Kampfzwerg might be, let's just say, when your children were younger, when they were 8, 10, 12, and they were angry that they didn't get to go somewhere they wanted to go, or upset that they didn't get ice cream. The stuff that kids can get pissed at, or
Mhm.
maybe someone who's just diminutive of status, who's adult, but they are uh, angry about something, but they're a bit wee. They're called a Kampfsveg. The literal translation of Kampfsveg is, for some reason, battle dwarf. I don't know why that would be a word because it's not like there's some famous story during World War II where legions of battalions of dwarves were sent in. I don't know why that would be a word, but so it's
Uh,
just used to describe anyone who is of smaller stature, and really angry. A battle dwarf.
okay. Did Randy Newman hear about this and turn it into a hit song? Um, I did that too. I did that to a friend of the show, Marvin. I sent a picture of one of my kids' choirs performed "You've Got a Friend in Me" from Toy Story
Hmm.
in their spring. I said, hey, "Yeah, the local high school performs Randy Newman. It's short people." Just kidding. It's actually Good Old Boys, which is probably the most offensive song that Randy Newman ever wrote. Of course not. It was Toy Story. Kampfswerk?
Kampfsveg. Kampfzwerg. Kampfsveg.
Kampfswerk. Yeah, because I would have guessed with comp it was something to do with being outside, or but no, it's
Yeah.
Battle Dwarf.
Battle dwarf. Okay. There you have it, folks.
All right.
As always, thanks for listening. Please like,
Yeah.
share, subscribe, shoot us a review. Check out dreamidiots.com. We're rapidly approaching episode number 200 here in a few weeks, a little later this year anyway.
I was about to say,
So
wait a minute, what?
by the fall, we'll hit number 200, and we appreciate you listening and hanging in there with us.
Yes, indeed. Thanks. Keep being good to each other and take care of each other because it's getting rough in here.